and in the process eliminate Palestinians.
I mean, to be fair, Benjamin Netanyahu himself has also personally talked about the Greater Israel Project. Like it's not like, I mean, maybe it's just red meat for the base, but he has also openly stated his desires for Israel's boundaries to expand. Recognitions that we'll get. Now let's talk about the reaction to the hostage swap. I don't want to see this person's face any longer. I can't deal with Donald Trump.
Zangauka was reunited with his mother. You are my life, my champion, my hero, she says. For more than 2 years, her son's been held by Hamas, but the living hell of his captivity is now finally over. And as the hostages were reunited, the images were beamed into Hostages Square. The mood, one of sheer elation.
For me, it's everything. It's human being life, and they are coming back.
Seeing specifically Alon, who's the son of my arts teacher, return, it's like this big relief.
For the families of hostages who'd already been released, this day has brought some resolution.
For my grandma, it was impossible. Every day she woke up in the tunnel, every poster she saw, she went back there. Now she's released. So this release is not 20 hostages only. It's a release of all live hostages came back from Gaza.
Since October the 7th, the square has been a site of weekly demonstration. Chants of frustration are now turning into songs of celebration. And tears that once fell in despair are now tears of relief.
They've been coming to Hostages Square for the last 2 years to campaign and pressure the government, and they can't believe this moment has finally come. The mood here is one of optimism, relief and joy. And they credit one man, really, with getting the deal done, and that's the American president, Donald J. Trump.
When helicopters pass overhead, ferrying freed captives to nearby hospitals, the crowd erupts again and again, looking upwards to the sky. The sense of catharsis here is palpable. After a nightmare 2 years, a chance for the healing process of a nation to begin.
And we say thanks to the US for their involvement and their huge push to move it, because our government didn't seem to care much about it.
There's pain, and there's grief, and there's sense of big relief. And the most intense feeling is that we're really all connected. It's like a part of me came home.
Now that the living hostages are home, attention turns to those who did not survive. Officials say repatriate time. And even amidst the celebrations here, for some families, closure still remains heartbreakingly out of reach. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages. Some of these people have been behind bars for decades. The police were under orders to try to keep things low-key.
Yeah, Itamar Ben-Gvir said no celebrations again.
Contagious.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners, many of whom have been held in jails for years without trial. And now, amidst this chaos and euphoria, they are being greeted as heroes.
There were tears.
If you think the majority of Israelis actually care about the hostages like this, you're deluded. How is Western media going to deal with this when all these freaks demand they go back into Gaza? What do you mean? They're just going to... I mean, look at this anchor. He says Israel says these guys are terrorists. Like, that's how the media is going to go along with it. How has the media covered it so far? Incredibly biased, incredibly one-sided. No investment in, like, reporting on the accuracy of incidents at all. And that's precisely what they're going to continue doing. They'll probably stop covering it and move on to other shit so that people stop complaining. And it'll also simultaneously make it impossible to get the word out with the likes of Larry Ellison purchasing TikTok and David Ellison purchasing CBS. We have that to look forward to.
And there was defiance. This man said he'd been beaten in the hours before his release.
My message to the world is to come together and help the Palestinian people to stop massacres. I wish peace on everyone. My last moment in prison were most painful of my life.
Delight for some, dismay for others, who suffered a cruel disappointment. Khadir, a police officer, has just been told that her brother had not been released as promised. Instead of being brought here, he was sent to Gaza, and he'll then be deported. Khadir's sister Abir was here too, along with their cousin, stunned at the news.
We got a call from my cousin last night and a written warning taped on our door saying we weren't allowed to celebrate. At midnight, they moved him south and then to Gaza, all without our knowledge. We came to see him, but we were shocked when he wasn't on the bus. It's part of their playbook, psychological terror, playing with our emotions and those of the prisoners.
The tendrils and echoes of captivity seep deep into the West Bank. In the crowd we meet Aman Nafa, speaking to her husband Nael. He was initially convicted of murder, but then spent 45 years in prison, more than any other Palestinian, and was deported to Turkey earlier this year. To many, he's a hero. Aman doubts Israel wants peace.
I know that Netanyahu, he did this and he doesn't want to do it. And Netanyahu himself, he just wants the war to continue until he finished Palestinian everywhere, not just in Gaza, even in the West Bank.
What are your emotions when you see the attention of the world at these Israeli hostages?
Double standards, but I believe the people...
By the way, these are... there's two things happening here. One, if there's a white Western reporter, that means it's in the West Bank. Because right now, as it stands, no Western reporter, with the exception of one Swiss journalist, I think, has been able to go into the Strip. So that's a quick way to... I mean, they already mentioned it, but if you're, like, confused in the future, if you want to understand, like, where these guys are, know that they're in the West Bank, right? And the prisoners that are being released, the hostages that are being released on the Israeli side to the West Bank, or the ones that are being deported, okay, those are Palestinians who have either been under administrative detention or Palestinians who have been tried in military courts as enemy combatants, which is, again, illegal because the occupation of the West Bank by the Israeli military is illegal. And the people that they arrest and apprehend in many circumstances haven't actually done any wrongdoing whatsoever. But the ones that they do actually present as like, or the ones that they do present as like, the most significant or whatever, those are the people that are actually, in most circumstances, fighting against Israeli troops. As in, technically under international law, they do have a right, a legal right to fight back against the military occupation. This is an apartheid. It is definitionally an apartheid. So whenever you hear about like a Palestinian that's been arrested for doing a murder, in most circumstances, they're talking about a Palestinian that had like a bag of a bag with like scissors in it or something. And they either like stabbed an Israeli occupational force soldier or a cop or something like that, that was in the process of, in many circumstances, in the process of Palestinians on illegally occupied soil that does not belong to Israel. So that's something that you always have to consider. Now, having said that, are there people who have killed like civilians? Absolutely, there are. But we've seen the civilians in the West Bank. Do with that information what you will. They do not get criminal prosecution, as a matter of fact, for people killing Palestinians.
They know what is happening in Palestine. This is important for us.
And her skepticism is not unique.
Israel think that they could save their security only by more blood and more of our people.
So it feels like what you're saying is there's going to be more attacks, more battles, more deaths.
Sure, if there is no political solution, this conflict will continue to be bloodshed conflict.
It is that fear of the future that drives anxiety into the fabric of the West Bank, where the spectre of violence always looms. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Ramallah.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we've reported, the Gaza ceasefire deal is in effect. Phase 1 of the U.S.-backed 20-point plan is under...
It's time for GOAT talk. Israeli historian Ilan Pape talking to Amy Goodman, my two goats.
Way. Hamas has released all 20 living captives, hostages. Israel's releasing some 2,000 Palestinians in Ramallah and now in Khan Yunis in Gaza. Today, President Trump addressed the Israeli Knesset and then is on his way to co-chair a so-called peace summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will not be among the 27 or more world leaders who will attend. He was invited, but says he is not going. For more, we're joined by the Israeli historian, author, and professor Ilan Pape, professor of history and director of the European Center for Palestine Studies at the University of Exeter, and the chair of the Nakba Memorial Foundation. Among his books, The of Palestine Almost 20 Years Ago and Gaza in Crisis, which he co-wrote with Noam Chomsky. His new book, Israel on the Brink, and the 8 revolutions that could lead to decolonization and coexistence. We thank you so much for being with us. Professor Pape, if you could start off by responding to what has happened. We're watching in Khan Yunis, prisoners being released, Palestinian prisoners up to 2,000, and in the occupied West Bank, though there, families were told if they dare celebrate the release of their loved ones, they might be arrested. And we saw the release of the 20 Israeli hostages as they return to Israel. The Hamas says they're returning the hostages, the remains, over the next few days. Israel has not said they will return the prisoners, of which it's believed there are nearly 200 in Israeli prisons. Your response overall, and now to the summit in Egypt.
Yes. First of all, there is some joy in knowing that the bombing of the people in Gaza has stopped for a while. And there is joy in knowing that Palestinian political prisoners have been reunited with their families, and similarly that Israeli hostages were reunited with their families. But except from that, I don't think we are in such an historical moment as President Trump claimed in his speech in the Knesset and beforehand. We are not at the end of the terrible chapter that we have been in it for the last 2 years. And that chapter is an Israeli attempt by a particularly fanatic, extreme right-wing Israeli government to try and use in the West Bank and genocide in Gaza to downsize the number of Palestinians in Palestine and impose Israel's will in a way that they hope would be at least endorsed by some Arab governments in the world. And so far, they have an alliance of Trump and some extreme right-wing parties in Europe. And now I hope that the world will not be misled that Israel is now ready to open a different kind of page in its relationship with the Palestinians. And what you told us about the way that the celebration were dealt with in the West Bank and the incineration of the sanitation center shows you that nothing has changed in the dehumanization and the attitude of this particular Israeli government and its belief that it has the power to wipe out Palestine as a nation, as a people, and as a country. And I hope the world will not stand by, because up to now it did stand by what occurred in Palestine.
We have just heard President Trump's address to the Israeli Knesset. He followed the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. I'm not sure, but in listening to Netanyahu, I don't think he used the word Palestinian. President Trump has just called on the Israeli president to pardon Netanyahu. Your thoughts on this, and also the possibility of why Netanyahu has not joined this summit that President Trump will be co-chairing. Many are speculating for different reasons, didn't want to anger the right that's further right than him. Others are saying the possibility of his arrest, not on corruption charges, but on crimes against humanity, the whole case before the International Criminal Court.
It could be a mixture of all of it, but I think at the center of it is the nature of the Israeli government that was elected in November 2022. this alliance between a very opportunistic politician who's only interested in surviving and keeping his position as a prime minister, alongside messianic, neo-Zionist politicians who really believe that God has given them the opportunity to create the greater Israel and maybe even beyond the borders of Palestine, and in the process eliminate Palestinians.
I mean, to be fair, Benjamin Netanyahu himself has also personally talked about the Greater Israel Project. Like it's not like, I mean, maybe it's just red meat for the base, but he has also openly stated his desires for Israel's boundaries to expand. And yes, Funk Master Call, I did bring up the fact that Palestinian joy is illegal. They still do it regardless.
I think that his consideration are always about his chances of survival. So whatever went in his mind, he came to the conclusion that going to Cairo is not going to help his chances of being re-elected. My great worry is not that he didn't go to Cairo. My greatest worry is that he does believe that his only chance of being re-elected is still to have a war going on, either in Gaza or in the West Bank or against Iran or in the north with Lebanon. We are dealing here with a reckless, irresponsible politician who is even willing to drown his own state in the process of saving his skin and his neck. And the victims will always be, from this adventurous policy, the Palestinians. I hope the world understands that the urgent need of, and I'm talking about world leaders rather than societies, you already discussed with Ahmad what is the level of solidarity among civil societies. But I do hope that political elites would understand especially in the West, their role now is not to mediate between Israelis and Palestinians. Their role now is to protect the Palestinians from destruction, elimination, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. And nothing of that duty, especially of Europe that is complicit with what happened, and the United States that are complicit with what happened in the last 2 years. Nothing of that we heard in the speeches so far in preparation for the summit in Egypt. And I have a feeling.
Wait, the chatter that is talking about like half our soldiers, you are only legally allowed to capture active combatants as POWs. It is simply inaccurate to call them all POWs or prisoners. I'm just here saying you should not say things that are inaccurate. One is legal and the other is illegal under international law. It's a big difference. There's a reason media only refers to them as hostages and Palestinians as prisoners. It's because people do make that distinction in their mind. Yeah, except the media is wrong when they actually refer to all of the captives in the hands of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and numerous other resistance groups as hostages. Because there is a good chunk that were actually taken as captives from military bases. There is a really funny in this moment. I guess it's like you can actually say it's funny, even though it's like kind of fucked up to laugh about it. But like a really fucked up way in which the media has referred to Nimrod Cohen, for example, where they say like Nimrod Cohen was kidnapped from a tank and held as a hostage. He was in a tank, okay? There is no international standard where someone who is sitting in a fucking tank is considered being kidnapped as a fucking hostage. But the reality of the matter is, in Western media, you are still a little baby hostage. And you can still be kidnapped, even if you are inside of a fucking tank. Aren't there like 3 out of the 48 that are actual soldiers? No. There are some that were soldiers, but were actually taken hostage, and they weren't in active duty at the time. Or like there are active duty soldiers who weren't in military fatigues or weren't like actually engaging in like Argamani's boyfriend. Okay, Noah Argamani's boyfriend famously was at Nova Festival. He actually is, it turns out, active duty in the military, part of the special forces in Israel, but he was at a festival. So he was not a belligerent. He was not an armed combatant, and he was taken hostage. So there is that distinction as well. If you want to get like super literal with it, that is a distinction that matters. Now, of course, it doesn't fucking matter to Israel because the rule of warfare for Israel is you can kill anyone and everyone and then claim that they're fucking Hamas. The rule of warfare for actually killing people who are literally armed combatants for Israel is that you can kill them in their hospital beds. You can kill them when they're going home. You can kill them and their family members. This is all illegal, okay? Israel has never abided by international standards. Israel's every single act on the Gaza Strip is literally illegal. By international standards, as a belligerent occupier of a captive population that is hermetically sealed from the rest of the planet, you are not supposed to actually go in there and bomb that strip. Every single bomb, every single military action that has been taking place inside of Gaza that Israel is the belligerent occupier of is actually an illegal act. People do not understand that. People do not realize that. Israel had no right under international law to go into a territory comprised entirely of a captive civilian population. It's just so crazy. And this is before we even start talking about the West Bank, where it's even more illegal. But it doesn't matter. International rules, international law, regulations, the rules of combat, rules of warfare only matter if someone is there to actually hold a nation state like Israel accountable, okay? And the Western-backed leadership has actually created numerous loopholes when making assessments of legality, such as proportionality, okay? Proportionality is a legal loophole created for like the United States of America or even countries like Israel when they are slaughtering civilians. And yet Israel has completely dropped all notion of proportionality because they were not even invested in making it seem as though they are trying to actively target Hamas militants or actively try to take out some of their own hostages from the Gaza Strip. They were not invested in that at all. They were very clearly, definitionally, by their own word, open about their intention to do a genocide, to do an ethnic cleansing on the entire population.
Feeling that we won't hear anything about it also later on. There is a different way in which our civil societies...
How are you here still streaming? Wait, what do you mean? Where should I have been going? What do you mean? Was I going somewhere? Should I be at your mom's house? Is that what it is? Maybe this chatter thought I would have gotten raptured because I'm a good Christian. Have you thought about that? You guys are being meanies about him, saying, no, he means like you should be in prison or something. But I like to think he's being nice, and he's thinking, I'm surprised that you haven't been harponzoed into the heavens because you're such a good Christian. Just saying.
I refer to Palestine as a place that has to be saved and protected, and still this irrelevant conversation about our political elites, this deal, a two-state solution, all of that has nothing to do with what we are experiencing in the way that the Israeli government thinks it has an historical moment to totally de-Arabize Palestine and eliminate and expunge the Palestinians from history and the area.
Thanks for watching.